welcome to Today in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone. My guest today is Assistant Superintendent for Student Services at Woburn Public Schools. I feel like that's quite the mouthful, but Michael Baldassarre is here with us. As a parent of 4 young now adults, I'm really excited to be chatting with Michael because there's a lot about the school system and this role in particular that I actually don't understand. But I know how important the work that he does is. So welcome, Michael.
Well, Samantha, first, thank you for having me. And I know that you've had a series in which you've welcomed many of my administrative colleagues from the Woburn Public Schools. And it's really great to have an opportunity to communicate with you and through you to our families and our community members, and hopefully let everyone know the good things that are happening in our schools that we're really proud of.
Well, we really appreciate how welcoming and available everybody has made themselves, because the reality is, for a lot of us parents, there are lots of forums and meetings and things, and I encourage our community to go to them in person. Nothing replaces that. But a lot of us don't have the opportunity to do that all the time, or we don't know what questions to ask, or we don't get a chance to meet everyone. So this is a great opportunity to do that. And I have to say, despite the fact that I've had 4 children who've gone through school systems, a couple of which who have had special services, I actually don't know a lot about what your role does for the school. So I'm guessing I'm not alone, and would love to just hear from you directly a little bit about your function.
Yeah. So, you know, the title is Assistant Superintendent. As you know, our superintendent, Dr. Crowley, has a very big job, so big that he needs plenty of assistance. And that's where I come in, as do my counterparts, Wendy Sprague, who oversees curriculum, and Joe Aaliyah, who oversees operations and finance and facilities. And in my title is the words Student Services. So I have oversight over anything in the district that has to do with servicing students. And so what that means is there's a really wide scope to the work. So the big things are special education, and students who have certain educational needs, sometimes disadvantages and sometimes advantages, to make sure that they're getting a really great, high-quality education here in Woburn. If you think about like all the departments, like what I do on the day-to-day basis, I have oversight of the guidance department. I do a lot of work in generating policies that are favorable, obviously, to student learning. Because we're talking about operations, I do a lot of work with creating job descriptions for people who are going to do any of the 100, plus jobs that we have in our system. Sometimes in the schools we have legal matters that pertain to students, and sometimes personnel, and sometimes, just a lot of, when you're talking about an operation as big as our school system, sometimes I'm involved in things that are of a legal nature. I assist in providing professional development that I'll talk about again in just a moment for all of our staff. We have, as I mentioned, students who are in special education. We also have students who are on 504 accommodation plans. That is, that's through the Americans with Disabilities Act, to make sure that children and young adults are getting the right accommodations in their classrooms so that they can learn. I oversee that. I oversee the district's Medicaid reimbursement program. I do all that I can to ensure that the federal Medicaid program, who provides financial reimbursements to schools, to make sure that the city of Woburn is getting as much of those Medicaid funds as we can, because obviously it equates to better services for our city, which includes, what we do in our schools. I oversee the federal grants for Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. So that's a grant for the economically disadvantaged children. That's a grant for high quality education and professional development and mentorship for teachers. The third grant, Title III, is for students who don't speak the English language. And then the fourth is for school safety. So with that, I have a lot of work that I do for school safety and helping students who don't speak the English language to learn the English language so that they can be excellent learners. I oversee education for homeless students, just to make sure that they're getting the services that they need, and students who are homeschooled. And so with that, I have to do a lot of program development. And we've done a lot of work under Dr. Crowley to move the district forward in accordance with our new strategic plan, which is called a Blueprint for Our Future. The portion of that I oversee, it's called Equity for All Students. So just to talk, I'll talk about two big initiatives that
First, can I just say, wow.
Oh, I'm not done. Yeah, I know. It's
That was
great,
a real,
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to, I'm sort of joking, but I'm not. That's a really wide swath of responsibility. I think sometimes as parents, we forget how much goes into helping our students be successful in school and all these factors, and that there's a wide, complex set of circumstances by which students come to school every day.
Right.
And so thank you for doing the hard work
If you think about
doing that.
just the size of an organization or a company, a lot of people work in companies and they say, oh, how many customers do you have, or how many employees do you have? Well, essentially our company, we have 4,500 students. Right, which means that we have probably the neighborhood of 9,000 parents. So that's 13,500 customers. And we have just shy of 1,000 employees, and the schools, as most taxpayers in Woburn know, is a $70 million budget annually. So it's a very large organization that's in 10 different school buildings. There's always a lot going on. So getting back to the actual role, we've done some really interesting work over the last year and a half, and one of the major initiatives that we have embarked upon has been a training for all of our faculty and staff in therapeutic crisis intervention for schools, and that's a program that's administered by Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. And the program's been in existence since the early 1980s, and it's designed to help adults to work with children and young adults when they're really having a very difficult time.
Okay.
And it's research-based, and it's proven to improve relationships between adults and children, or adults and teenagers. It's proven to teach children and young adults new coping skills to help them manage the really stressful situations in life. It's proven to reduce significant incidents like fighting and disrespect, but also big incidents like staff injury and student injury. So up until now, we've probably had about 250 people trained, and over the next year, 2 years, it's our hope that everybody in the district is going to receive some training in that program. So we're really proud of it.
And you should be. I think that's really important, because we know that the environment by which a student is learning matters. Not just their own interaction with the teacher, but what's happening around them in the classroom and the school at large. So I love it. You said something about equity as you were chatting earlier, and I think a lot of us don't understand what that means. Some of us hear the word equity, we think that means everybody gets the same thing. But it's not really, when it's applied in an educational environment, what's optimum. So talk to us a little bit about what it really means.
The terminology, equity versus equality. In schools, we seek equity, and we essentially go by the mantra of every student gets what he or she needs. And there are some students that really don't have a lot of need, where things come easy to them. And they have a big system of support either in or outside of the school. And on the other side of that, we have some children, some students who have great need. And so more resources are allocated towards students who have great need than our students who have very little need. I think that the most common pictorial definition of equity is there's a picture of 3 people, and they're watching a baseball game. I'm sure you've seen that picture, right? And there's a fence, and the person who is either younger or not that tall is staring right at the fence. And the person who's in the middle, their eyes just go over the fence just enough. And then there's the person who's very tall and can see everything the whole field, all of the people who are watching the game, you know, and just really enjoy the view, whereas the other people are inhibited. And there are 3 boxes. And so everybody is standing on one box because that's equality. And still this person can't see, and this person can barely see, and this person can see everything. When the taller person on the far right needs no box at all, and the person in the middle needs only 1 box, and the person over here needs 2 boxes. So the resources are allocated to provide each student or young adult with what they need so that they can access learning to maximize their own human potential. And that's what we do. That's what we do with our allocation of instructional force, with our allocation of financial resources, because we want every one of our students to be able to maximize what they're able to do when they're out of the Woburn Public Schools.
Yeah. I love that visual. I think that does a lot to explain it. One of the things that I think we talk a lot about, and I know sometimes I leave school systems or meetings that I've personally been in or whatever the situation is, and there's a lot of focus on student areas of weakness, and appropriately so, right? Those how many boxes do I need to lift you up? But it's equally important to address a student's individual gifts as well. And I think there's a whole bunch of research and studying that shows sort of tapping into those interests and passions and gifts helps them learn the things that they might struggle with. How do we as a school system help address students who might have some needs but have great gifts, but also students who might be very gifted and, like you said, might come into school, it comes very easy, they're not particularly challenged. How do we design for them?
Yeah, if I go all the way back to when I myself was a special education teacher, I recall that we used to have to construct lesson plans in a certain way. And what that was is, like, if I were going to teach a group of students a thing, that I had a methodology by which I was going to do it, I had the resources that I needed to do it, and I knew what I was talking about, right? Well, at the end of that lesson plan, I remember that we used to have to craft in 2 additional pieces of information. One was opportunities for more learning, meaning some kids need to do this thing a different way, or maybe another time. But also, the second piece was opportunities for enrichment. And what that means is that for the students who got it so well, what else could I do to enhance or bring them to a higher level with regard to this piece of information that we're trying to teach, right? So when we look at kids' individual gifts, it stems all the way back to what a teacher is doing in the classroom from moment to moment to moment, and that everybody is being addressed through what we call differentiated instruction. And what that means is that there could be 25 students in a classroom, but things are being done 2 or 3 different ways, so that you know, the methodology of instruction that's attractive to a student is what they're receiving, but also the opportunity that they have to learn is maximized. And then beyond what goes on in the classroom, if you think about, you know, what goes on in Woburn with regard to all of the programs and possibilities that are accessible to our students, athletics is obviously big. You know, there's really any sport that any student wants to play in Woburn, they can play, and they certainly do. The clubs and activities that we have for students to be involved in to enrich their lives. And then there are obviously a lot of things that are even beyond the clubs and activities, such as music lessons in school during the day, and participating in, again, another, you know, club or activity like band or chorus. We have, the opportunities are endless, and sometimes our students even come to us and say, oh, you know, we would like to start a new club, a yoga club, or some type of debate club, or a chess club, or and you know, with today's day and age, there's students who want to start clubs that have to do with computer gaming and electronics, and that's their gift, and that's what they like, and we give them those opportunities to do that. You know, the Woburn Public Schools is really well resourced, and thanks to, you know, everyone in Woburn, certainly the mayor and the city council for you know, being there, you know, for the schools. It's not like that in every community. And because of the types of resources that we have, we're able to provide so much more than so many communities can for their kids. And that's one of the many reasons why I certainly love being in Woburn.
You know, as a parent, I feel, you know, I look back, and my kids are now older. My youngest is a senior in high school, and I look back, and I think it's natural for parents at this stage to look at all the things we did wrong, right? Like, you know, they become these adults, and we've done all these great things, and we've helped them through lots of things in their life today, and hopefully we've prepared them for what's next. But I also go back and I look at their education and my interactions with the schools, and I think, you know, we were fortunate. We did a lot of things well. But I go back, and one of the things I'm not sure I did so well was to help my kids tap into everything that was available to them. I think they tapped into everything they technically needed, but there was probably this way more richness that they could have gotten out of the environment, but they didn't think to ask, and I didn't necessarily know what was even out there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what advice you give for parents of students who may have special needs or students who may just be an average student. How do we take advantage of all the things that you just described?
Right. And that's, well, before you think about what you have to do as a parent, I actually have to speak on behalf of the schools, because we have some things that we can also do that make these types of things, of programs or activities or additional learning opportunities that are available to our students. Now, we know that they're there. One of our really discussions that we've had of late is how are we communicating what is available to moms and dads and students and grandma and grandpa and everybody in the community. And when we look at it, like, communication now happens much, much different it did than when we were kids. You know, the note went home in the backpack.
It sure did. Even when my kids were young,
Right.
we got the notes in the backpack.
And that was it, right?
Yeah.
If the phone rang, it's because we were in trouble.
100% true.
Like, nobody was calling and saying, hey, you know, we just wanted to call and see if Mike wants to participate in the yoga club. Like, that's not the way that it went, right? And communication has changed so drastically that in large school systems, I don't want to call it out of control, but it is really, really hard for one family with 4 students in 4 different grades, and I know this myself, but to know everything that's happening. Because maybe the teacher communicates using an application like Class Dojo, or maybe just email. And maybe the next teacher communicates using Twitter or a personal, or not a personal Facebook, but a classroom Facebook page. And then there's the constant stream of what seems like spam, just messages that kind of come, notification, notification, notification. And then we have our all-call system where, okay, we're calling to tell you there's no school today, but maybe we're calling to tell you that we're doing a fundraiser, or maybe we're calling to tell you that. And sometimes people stop listening to those things because they've become so frequent. An article in the newspaper doesn't get as much, we don't get as much feedback because people don't communicate that way anymore. So what we are looking at is having one method of communication, like one place to go for everybody. Because you don't know what to go to the website for, and what to go to Twitter for, and what to look at WBZ for the school closings for. There's so many different modes of communication that unfortunately people miss things. Because I could say, oh, I put it in the newspaper and I put it on local access. Okay, maybe you got 10% of the population because they don't communicate that way. Or in text messages is another way that we do that. So we are looking at a method by which there would be one place to go for all communication. And that would be district communication, school communication, class communication, so that, the superintendent and the assistant superintendents are communicating using this, and the principals are communicating using this, and the teachers are. Now we can better control and understand that our messages are getting out and that those things are available for our kids. For what you're asking, there's a lot of things, like for middle school and high school kids, there might be an announcement that this group is going to be meeting, tryouts are going to be happening. And if the student gravitates towards that interest, they go home and say, hey, Ma, hey, Dad, or family member, I would like to participate in this, and that's how we find out. So I think that when it comes down to accessing what's available, it's really important that we communicate well. To that end, we have brought on board this year a family and community engagement liaison. This is a full-time employee who is dedicated to doing things to connect our families to our schools. We are focused right now on the registration process so that when students come in, that they can have, and parents can understand that we register for our schools the same way, and they can have assistance in doing so, because not everybody speaks English or not everybody understands.
Can we get rid of the
process.
pieces of paper that I have to fill out
Yeah.
for different kids
Well,
with
there's
all
still
the
going
same
to be
information?
there's still going to be some, but you're right. It is amazing that we can give an enrollment packet to somebody and they have to put their name and address on 7 different.
Well, what I
pieces of
ended up
paper,
doing
yeah.
is I photocopied them.
Yeah.
And then I just put the part that was the same. And then, but I had access to
To a
the
photocopier.
photocopy machine. Not
Yeah.
everybody has that,
Yeah.
right? But
And our family and community engagement liaison is also working to connect families who are economically disadvantaged with really important services that are available, such as fuel assistance and food assistance, and other resources that can help them, with their family. And also, we're looking to communicate really, really well and engage and support families that need support. So we have made the investment in communication, and now it's just a matter of developing the protocols that are going to make it so that you don't have to ask the question that you asked, that the information is there for you and you know where to get it.
yeah, that's fantastic. I'm thrilled. For those parents who might be listening who want to reach out to ask for at least
Yeah.
directionally, should they go through, call the main office? Is there a central
Yeah.
location?
The
that
first,
research-
the first point of contact is always the classroom teacher.
Yeah.
They know their
Good.
students and they know it's,
Good.
and then the principal, if it's a school-wide thing, but if
Yeah.
it's a district question or district concern, we all have an open door policy.
Okay.
And we joke about it, like sometimes it's like, it's so good that we have this because we are always engaged and we always know what's going on. And then some days we're like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Because there's so many things and people are always so welcome to come in. We learn a lot. And anybody can call or email me anytime. And I always set up appointments for folks to come in and talk if it's something that we have to talk about, as does the superintendent and our assistants and our special education administrator. Everybody does. So we're just literally a phone call away or an email away.
I love it. And for me personally, I love talking to people on the phone, but I
Yeah.
realize that practicalities of schedule, sometimes we miss each other that way, and you play terrible phone tag. I want to go back to something you said earlier. You talked about in a classroom at any one given time, there's multiple methods of learning that are happening. And in my mind, what that conjures up to me is that some people are auditory, some people are really visual, some
Yeah.
people are tactile, need to touch things, some people are very text-based. Me personally, I host a podcast, I host the show, but if it's audio
Yeah.
only, I'm off in I'm like one of the dog chasing the next thing that flew by me. But if it's written text, I can read it very, very much so. Talk about how teachers create those multiple methods in their classroom.
It is, the theory is called multiple intelligences, and it was developed by a researcher by the name of Howard Gardner at Harvard University. When his original work, he had stated that there were 7 intelligences that it is kind of like irrefutable evidence to say that the question is who is smart and who is not. And that our concept of smart has always equated to what did you get on your SAT, how well are you off in mathematics, how fast can you read, how well can you comprehend. Yet there are people who have such incredible gifts with regard to, let's just say, athletics. There may be athletes who play professional sports that when they talk on the microphone or somebody asks them a question, that they're not is easy to understand. And someone may say, gosh, this person's not really smart. But their brains can tell their bodies to do things that we could not dream of. Weaving in and out of football traffic, how high one can jump or how fast one can run, or the ability to throw a ball at 100 miles an hour and be able to hit a target the size of a quarter from almost 100 feet away. Like amazing, amazing feats. And musically, that maybe somebody is not that great at mathematics or can't read very well, but when you put them on a piano, that they can make music that no other person on the planet could make. I think on America's Got Talent, a young boy with autism actually won the show.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, and it's amazing. And so there's these different intelligences that Howard Gardner came up with. Started with 7. I do believe there's 8 now. He added naturalistic, or people who are really good with nature. And there's musical intelligence and kinesthetic, or moving. There's logistical intelligence, and it's just an interpersonal, being able to talk with someone, or intrapersonal, being able to do things by yourself. And so when our teachers go through their education programs, and this dates back now probably 20 years, that multiple intelligences theory is part of their course of instruction. And what they're taught to do is to incorporate as many modalities as they can in their instruction. So if I can have students moving around when they learn, it's obviously better than them sitting still. If I can incorporate music into their learning, it's obviously better than this drab chalk and talk, type of thing. So if they really want to reach their students, they can't do it the way of a piece of chalk on a board with somebody just standing in front talking anymore. Our kids are constantly stimulated by the worlds around them now, with iPads and phones and games and everything tech. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to bring them into a classroom and anesthetize them, with a boring curriculum. So it really is on the teachers to come up with great, innovative, invigorating lessons for their kids, because we know that that's how they learn best. I know that's how I learn best. Like, it's really hard sitting in a like the old school classroom now. Even for me, I would probably go, oh my God, you know what I mean? I could just read the book myself. You know what I mean?
It's true. I don't sit still very well myself.
Yeah.
I'm a pacer, and so even it's sometimes as simple as allowing movement for students so that they can concentrate on what they're learning, but they actually need some physical movement, right?
Yeah.
To do all kinds of interesting things. We're just about out of time, but
That
before
was
we
quick.
go, it was
Yeah.
really quick.
Yeah.
I could keep talking for a very long time. Before I let you go, I just want to talk about one more thing. You were at the CPAC meeting last night, I believe.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to share a little bit of what that group means to you and your role. I know that they do some excellent work. It'd be great to hear from your perspective what that work is and how it feeds into the work that you do.
Yeah. So the CPAC, which stands for Special Education Parent Advisory Council, there's CPACs. All districts have CPACs, and some of them are really well attended, and some of them, are not. And from the meetings that I've been to, last night we had just shy of 30 people at the meeting last night. But I have been at CPAC meetings that have had upwards of 60 people. And those parents are representing our children in our schools who have learning disabilities. Now, we have about 1,000 students, who are educated under IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. And so with that, we'd certainly love to see and have more parents at the CPAC meeting. And I have met with the president of the CPAC to talk about how we can make meetings. We met last year to talk about how we can make meetings more appealing to our families. And so at many of our meetings, we offer childcare, and we also offer refreshments for our families. Like there wasn't refreshments last night, and when I got there, I was like, oh, I thought we were doing that. And so I have to check into that. But we want to make it so that if mom or dad is coming to the CPAC meeting after work with their children, that they can't say, oh, well, we're starving, so we, at least there's snacks there. Or what are my kids going to do while we're at the meeting? So we have.
That's great.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that the child care was offered.
And
That's
a
really
number
important
of,
thing.
we have a number of groups at the high school, here at the high school, where students, just great kids that give their time to community
Great.
service endeavors. And they actually come and they do a great great job with the little ones, and there's arts and crafts and things for them to do or play in the gym. And then we also are offering translation services. So for families who want to be a part of it that don't speak English, they can come and they can understand, the types of things that we're talking about. So the PAC has a number of initiatives, and one is that they offer advice and opinions to the administration so that we can plan for good programming. And they certainly have great communication with our school committee. We have what's called the Student Services and Achievement Subcommittee of the school committee, and the CPAC president actually sits on that board. So it actually increases and enhances the communication that takes place between hopefully all of our parents of our children with disabilities and the folks who are running the schools and the people who are overseeing the people who are running the schools. So they have a pretty wide scope of things that they do. And so last night when I was at the meeting, that was just so that I did a presentation last year, and after the presentation there was like an hour to an hour and a half of questions and answers. So last night I said, brief presentation, let's get to the questions and answers. And we were able to, sometimes people have individual concerns that are specific to their children, and sometimes people have district-wide questions about school safety and protocols and procedures and policies and how we do that, and if we can do things to make things better in the future. And that's what we do. So the CPAC has a webpage, and they announce well in advance what their meeting is for, and they have transition fairs, and they have all sorts of activities, fundraisers that they also do, that we would welcome more families to participate in, because it's a great way for me to retrieve information about our families' needs.
I love that, and I think for some people, I think they envision that I have to have a student with significant challenges and disabilities to be part of CPAC. That isn't at all the case.
Not at all.
And students and families of all different kinds of abilities can benefit and provide input into the services that we offer.
It's funny that you say that. In the past, I haven't done this here, but in other districts, I have removed the SE from CPAC. And just made it the PAC, Parent Advisory Council. Because I don't want to say that a parent who has a student who is gifted, or a great athlete, or a parent who is not speaking English, or the student is learning English, doesn't have the opportunity to come and learn and be heard. So when I was in the Everett Public Schools, I removed the SE from CPAC and just made it the PAC, the PAC. And it did help us grow our organization and welcome more people, because it seems to me as though if I didn't have a child in special education, as soon as I see Special Education Parent Advisory Council, why would I want to be involved? That's not, I would kind of feel awkward going in, well, I'm not in CPAC, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So thank you for clarifying. I think whether we call it or not, I do think people feeling that this is for them and it's a voice into student services and a whole bunch of, at the beginning of our conversation, you listed a whole bunch of responsibilities, special education being a very important one, but certainly not the only one. And so this feels like a good opportunity to participate in planning and input and design of services.
Well, it's special education in and of itself. If you think about what actually happens in special education, every single component of the school district is a part of special education. If you think about it from instruction, facilities, finance, students, legal matters, policy matters, everything that I talked about, guidance, everything connects with special education in some way. As far as if the district were carved up into puzzle pieces and how are they connected, special education would probably be dead center right in the middle, because everything is ultimately connected to special education. Curriculum Like, you name it, everything is connected to special education.
Thank you so much for sharing some
Yeah.
really important things with us. I know I've learned a lot, actually, quite a bit about your role, but also all the things that are available to us. Even as a parent of 4 students, I don't think I realize quite how much is out there.
Yeah.
I thank you for our audience for listening and watching, and hope this has helped you help navigate the very many opportunities that are available to our students. Thank you for tuning in.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Samantha. All right.